This podcast is brought to you by Mapper Forward's new Patreon community, the Global Coffee Think Tank. Check the show notes or head to patreon.com/mapperforward to find out how you can become a member today. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar. This is our second last episode with Peter Giuliano, and we're talking about what specialty coffee is today. The definition has changed many times over the decades, and we're trying to understand what it is post-pandemic and pre-tsunami, which is a very interesting time. So, Peter, today we want to talk about how research is improving specialty coffee, or coffee in general, I guess, because, you know, you mentioned that you're heading up you're heading up coffee research.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So where is research going with regards to specialty coffee?
Yeah, I think. Well, I'm going to talk about three kind of specific things. One that we got involved with really early, and that's a really key thing, is sensory research.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked a little bit about sensory science and how we can apply it to cupping and how to think of it in terms of market, but it also can be really well deployed for understanding coffee and its preparation and all these mysteries that captivate us as baristas and coffee makers. Like, how do we've established, let's say, that our customer likes blueberry flavor. How do we maximize that?
Mm-hmm.
Whether in the roast or the coffee preparation or the farm
or the
level.
grain.
Yeah. And so research is really good at answering those kinds of questions. So we've done, we've got a few things happening right now that are in that territory. One that I haven't mentioned yet is we got a grant from Toddy to study cold brew and understand, cold brew is this phenomenon, right? And we've got all these beliefs about coffee brewed at refrigerator temperature is different than coffee that's brewed at room temperature is different than coffee that's brewed at hot temperature. But there was no published research on this. There was a lot of people doing it and developing intuitions and experiences, but we needed to quantify this and use chemistry and sensory science to study this. So we launched a project to study this, and then bam, the pandemic hit. So we had to do this research during the pandemic, which is a big, because
challenge.
Usually, you bring a sensory panel together in a room to taste coffee together and do their work.
Controlled environment, etc.
So this researcher, her name's Mackenzie Batali. She's Dr. Mackenzie Batali. She was a PhD candidate at the time, and then a postdoc doing this research. And she was preparing the coffee, putting it in mason jars, dropping it off on her panelists' doorsteps. and they were doing the sensory stuff over Zoom. It was amazing. And then they froze it, and they were able to bring it to the chemical analysis and do the chemical analysis and figure out what's driving all this. And the long and the short of it is they were able to determine and actually quantify some of the differences between coffee that's brewed at cold temperatures versus coffee that's brewed at hot temperatures. And that's valuable in an industry that's popularized this term of cold brew and is telling consumers that there are different. And there is a difference. So we were able to quantify that, and so we're beginning the publication cycle now of getting this out there so that people can actually use it and make their decisions about what kind of temperatures that they're going to use, et cetera. And it may lead to some evolutions in the way we describe these coffees, which is great. So that's a sensory oriented project, which is a lot of what we do. And that's very practical, I think, for a lot of people.
It's great because for the last 20 years, we've gone onto the internet and looked for opinions from people.
Right.
Of how should I brew cold brew?
Right, sure.
And it was just opinions, and people were telling you that, no, I know best because I've done it a lot.
Right. That's true. Another place that I think is really important, I mentioned it before, but it's critically important, is the genetic development of coffee. So for historical reasons, your listeners are probably aware that coffee is very homogeneous genetically outside of Ethiopia. They brought only a few plants out of Ethiopia to Yemen, a few plants from Yemen to everywhere else in the world. And so, all the coffee plants in Latin America are kind of genetically first cousins, and that's not a healthy, population from a disease standpoint.
Yep.
As we know, but it's also means, there's also some flavor implications there, there are genetic reasons for some of these things, these sensory attributes that we love about coffee, and we know very little about that. So World Coffee Research, an organization that we work with closely at the Coffee Science Foundation, we've done collaborative research with them. They're really focused on this genetic question and this agricultural question, because in the context of climate change, it is the critical one. We have to be developing temperature resilient, disease resistant, high quality coffees that have these attributes that we care about. We have to be developing them now because we have to be deploying them. Farmers need to be using them to adapt to their world. So this is critically important for the supply chain. And I'm just such a huge believer. I always like to say plant breeders are my heroes, and that's not just for coffee. Plant breeders have done such amazing things in food to help our agricultural sustainability on the planet. And this is critical work in coffee. And so, and the sensory evaluation is a big part of that. That's another reason, by the way, why we've developed this new cupping form. It helps us do that work a little bit better. So that's another sort of category of research. The third thing that I think is really important and is really interesting is consumer research. So
amen to that.
We've just finished a really kind of exciting thing. Do you know, have you had on the show Dr. Fabiana Carvalho?
No.
Okay, she's a neuroscientist. She studies.
Okay, great.
And she went to Oxford. She got her and she studied under a guy called Charles Spence, who's developed this thing called the cross-modal concept, which is about how when you perceive things, you feel like you're just smelling something or you're just tasting something, but you're actually perceiving all these other things at the same time. You're seeing things, you're hearing things, you're feeling things on your skin, and that in the brain, these stimuli affect each other.
Yep.
So the thing that you're looking at when you're tasting food affects how it tastes. And it's not just an illusion, it's a real thing that you're experiencing in your brain and in your and this is what Dr. Carvalho studies. So we did some research that had to do with packaged coffee packaging, and how it was expectations driven by coffee packaging, specifically the color, were driving people's expectations of the coffee. So we did all this consumer research. So we did it in a coffee shop here in Southern California in Long Beach, and another coffee shop in Durham, North Carolina. And we did about 120 consumers in each spot. And for each consumer, we'd sit them down, we'd give them a cup of coffee, ask them to talk about it, tell us how they thought it tastes, whether they liked it, what they tasted, etc. Then we gave them another cup of coffee with a bag that was pink. And we said, okay, here's coffee from this bag, and they did the same thing. And it was actually the same coffee.
Yep.
And then we said, okay, thank you. And then we gave them another coffee and another bag. And we said, okay, this is coffee from that bag. And it was a brown bag this time. And so we were able to measure how people's responses differed simply according to the color of the bag that they were presented with. Now, this may seem trivial to us coffee
Not at
fundamentalists,
all.
but it's not at all, because if you
I
can,
can't wait to hear the results.
the evidence from other industries shows that you can maximize sweetness perception simply by manipulating something like color.
Yeah.
By a lot. And everybody in coffee knows you pay a premium for sweetness when you're buying green coffee, a big one.
Yeah.
Or you care a lot about developing sweetness when you're roasting coffee. If you can maximize that experience by controlling the environment of the coffee taster through your shop or your bag or whatever, that's a real asset, and and so that's an
the
example
outcome?
of, well, I can't tell you that.
Is the research out yet?
Here's what I'll tell you. No, it's not. We just finished it. We're in data processing, but I can tell you I can tell you what we expect.
Okay.
Which is that the colors red and especially pink are really associated with sweetness.
I figured.
And it's a cultural effect. It's interesting though. It's pretty pan-cultural. I mean, but we'll see. And then brown is associated with in coffee, especially with, and also chocolatey and nutty.
Yeah, I figured.
And so what we're expecting to see is a boost in chocolatey and nutty, earthy, with the brown package, and sweetness and fruitiness with the pink package.
Wow.
And she's done work with cups, different colored cups and things like that. And so anyway, that's what
we've got to get her on the show. If you wouldn't mind making an introduction.
And also, she's the best.
She sounds like my people.
She really is. And she cares a lot. She cares so much about coffee. So she runs this thing in Brazil. She's Brazilian. She runs this thing called the Coffee Sensorium, which is dedicated to this.
Oh, I am connected with her on social media. I do. Okay. I know who you're talking about now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's just a fascinating thing. And you can do the same thing. You can study the same thing using sounds, using textures, etc. And the other thing that was great about doing that is I talked to most of the, I was there during the research. After they were done, I'd talk to the people, and you wind up, for somebody like me, you wind up engaging and listening to people tell you what they have to tell you.
Yeah.
So we're using bags from Savor. They're a coffee bag manufacturer based in Hawaii. They're supporting this research. They designed the things and everything. It's great. But these consumers were like telling us, we were studying the color. They wanted to tell us, oh yeah, I like these gussets and I like the closure at the top. And,
wow.
And it's so rich once you start, doing consumer research, even casually, people light up when you ask them what they think about things.
Yeah. We don't do it enough in this industry.
You're really, and you're so focused on talking to businesses here. It's something that I can't repeat enough. Find time to listen to who you're trying to serve, whether it's through surveys on the internet, or sitting down and talking to people, or paying money to do some consumer research. All of those are super valuable for people. And it's rewarding too, in more ways than just giving you information about how to run your business. It also gives you a chance to engage with the people that you're trying to serve.
And it conspires to your own success. Like when your customers are telling you what they want, they are conspiring to your success.
Absolutely. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. Okay, we've got one episode, sadly, to go. And in this episode, we are going to be looking at a new era in specialty coffee. And diversifying the meaning of specialty coffee. So we're going to head into that episode now. Peace, love, and peanut butter, everybody. Have an amazing rest of your day. Thanks, friends. If you enjoyed this video, here's what you should check out next. Consider supporting Map It Forward on Patreon, and be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell before you leave.